Hey everyone, welcome back to the Questioning Behaviour podcast. My name is Merle, and as always, I'm here with my much better co-host, Sarah Bowen.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects.
And of course, as always, we're here joined by yet another absolutely fabulous guest who will tell us more about her PhD journey and what she did after and what she's expecting from life and her professional career. So please give it up for Jantsje Mol. And as always, Jantsje, if you come onto this podcast as a guest, the very first question is, who are you, what do you do, and how did you get there?
Good question. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Jantsje Mol, and I'm currently a postdoc researcher at Crete at the University of Amsterdam. And I just finished my PhD at the Institute for Environmental Studies of the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, so the other one, in behavioral economics. So I worked on flood preparedness, and currently I work on very different things, but they all include experiments. So that's the main theme.
An experimentalist.
Nice. Yes. I love that name, but it doesn't translate so well in Dutch and in other Not everyone knows it, but yes.
What is it in Dutch? Experimentalist?
I guess it would be something like that. But also I think it doesn't translate so well to other disciplines. So I worked a lot with natural scientists, and the whole behavioral stuff is already out of their league. So not even if you start about experiments,
Okay. Would you class yourself as an economist, a behavioral experimental economist?
Yes.
Is that how you'd self-describe? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think depending on the audience, I use behavioral or experimental. But I prefer the experimental, but sometimes that's a bit too complicated.
Sounds pretty straightforward to me, but I guess I won't ask too many questions about that. But your topic is a bit different from the type of people we normally interview, because as you've already mentioned, you work with a lot of people from the natural sciences. How does that work realistically?
Yeah, so actually I finished my master. I did a research master in neuroeconomics at Maastricht University.
Lovely.
Which was really cool. So I had like half the courses in neuroscience and the other half in micro. And then I wanted to do a PhD in, behavioral experimental econ. I just had to apply because we were not the kind of program that connects the PhD to the master. So I just had to apply for a job at. And there were 2 positions open at the time, so I applied for both, and I got into this one, and I got rejected by the other one after getting into this one. So that didn't hurt so badly. And it was an ad for behavioral economics of flood preparedness. So I got into
very
this
good
institute.
topic in the Netherlands. Very important topic.
Yes, very timely also.
Yes.
Yeah, but so it was nice. So my promoter kind of set up a grant and hired 2 behavioral people. That was one colleague and me. So I ended up at this institute that doesn't have many behavioral or experimental researchers, but a very interesting theme. So. I think it has pros and cons, but in the beginning I struggled a bit because I wanted to go to all the conferences that you guys go to. And, I've been in Tilburg. I did the bachelor in Tilburg and then the master in Maastricht. And I felt like, this was my crowd. And then I suddenly was in a different crowd. But now
the Amsterdam crowd is still a good crowd. There's
exactly
behavioral stuff.
Right. So, but I was biking to Crete sometimes to the other university to join their seminars because that was a bit more of my field. But the good thing is, I had a nice theme, and then I had to develop some games, and there was not so much around there. I think over the years I became to appreciate the environmental theme even further. Before I was just, let me do experiments. I don't care about what. And now I have a bit more of a preference. But that's a bit how it worked out. And I met some nice people along the way. But it was also funny that the other PhDs were always complaining about too much data. I have some fellow PhDs that did meteorology stuff. A good friend of mine works with hurricanes, and they're always complaining about, having big data sets and waiting for the supercomputer. And I was like, I wish my data set was so large, that this was a problem. So that was a bit of a difference, right? I needed to construct data, first run an experiment. So I took, I think, 1.5 years to get something. And they started out, that felt a bit unfair at the time, with some
Sure.
huge ass data set that they were poking into.
Yeah.
So that was a bit different, yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about the types of experiments you ran? Because I'm like struggling to think of a research question related to flood preparedness that you could ask and answer with a sort of group of university students in a lab.
Yeah, good question. So I look mostly at the individual level, and the idea is here that, well, there's climate change and people move to vulnerable areas because everyone likes to live at the beach. And so the risk of flooding is increasing, and then there's multiple things you can do. And apart from, say, insurances and the structural stuff like dikes, you can also try to get people to improve their houses, right? So this they call dry floodproofing, which means there's no water coming in. And then there's also wet floodproofing, which means you don't stop it, but if it hits, you have less damage. So it means, for example, moving electrical appliances higher up, or fancy carpet, maybe not on the ground floor, but having some tiles, these kind of things.
And not like a really rare wood type flooring either.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not ideal.
No, that's not ideal. So basically I developed, it's an individual decision-making experiment, and I made a game with 100 houses, and it could be flooded or not. And then and we did many treatments. So in the beginning, I had to set up the game itself and see what risk people are willing to take. And then we introduced insurance, which we could do voluntary or mandatory. And that was quite nice because in this whole natural science literature, there's not so much, and they talk about insurance a lot, but you can't really do experiments with it. Or sometimes they have some claims data, but it's always confounded. So that was where the experimental part was very interesting. And then later I also did more other things like social norms. So we showed people, so many others clicked this button and invested. And I first started in the lab, and then I took it to online, and we ran it with homeowners in the floodplains. So I learned to address only those in certain zip code areas. And then we asked them also to enter their zip code so we could calculate the objective flood risk. And that's a bit how that worked.
Okay.
Interesting.
May I ask what the results were of these experiments? Because I'm quite curious. I mean, for the listener, I don't think the listener will know this. I think most listeners will know, if you know a bit about the Netherlands, about a solid 1/3 of the Netherlands is actually below sea level, which is obviously highly problematic. Unfortunately, most recently, one significant part of the Netherlands which isn't under the sea level, but which is actually above sea level, had a different kind of flooding issue. And this has actually been called out as a natural disaster, where essentially the southeast had the rivers come out of their bedding and flood those areas as well. So if there's one thing that is currently topical for the Netherlands besides the obvious Rona pandemic, it would be flooding. So actually your data set should be much bigger now, Jantsje.
Yeah, well, the thing is that especially in those parts that were now flooded, we didn't sample because there are not enough people living there to have a proper sample. No, I mean really close to the river. So they make different sections and calculate the flood risk. And there the flood risk is so high that luckily not so many people live there. But that's also why I didn't sample those. But actually in the Netherlands, the risk of river floods is way higher than the coastal floods. Because the defenses are, the structural defenses are just too good.
Yeah, the coastal defenses are great. I think the dikes and the delta works, I think, are world renowned. I don't think they've put the same systems up in the rivers in Limburg.
No, but there they use other measures which also helped. So in a sense, it was a bit weird to watch it because, some of my colleagues were actually looking at how it developed, and they were actually kind of happy seeing that some of the mitigation efforts from 10 years ago really worked out. So they made more, they call this room for the river, and there were some places where they allowed the water to flow into different banks and such, and that actually saved a lot of people, but still it's interesting to see.
It's interesting to see. It's atrocious to experience. I am actually from that region, so it was actually horrifying. But I feel like we are getting completely sidetracked and not at all talking about what we're supposed to be talking about.
But you got so interested in the flood.
Yeah, no, I mean this happens if you're from a region that is actually affected. No, so Jantsje, please tell me what actually came out of the experiments that you did, predominantly the lab experiments. I'm quite curious to hear what you found.
Generally, you could say some financial incentives work and others don't. And that's, I think, what is nice about these experiments, that you can show, okay, maybe this one's more promising than the other. You should maybe not set it up in the field. So, for example, the social norms didn't work at all. And then some of the financial incentives do work, but not so they didn't all have a very large effect. So, for example, this premium discount, people were super excited about that. So you would say, you get a discount on your insurance premium if you invest.
Sure.
And then it worked, but not to a very large extent.
So people just don't want to buy insurance?
Yeah, that might also be a thing. What I think was also interesting is that there was quite a substantial group of people that play double safe. So they both invest in insurance when it was mandatorily offered. In the game, that is.
Sure.
And they also then invest in protection. From a behavioral point of view, it was to be expected, but from a really theoretical insurer's point of view, that was really crazy. So I think that's a nice positive finding. But then, for example, the social norms thing, we thought, it would work. It works really nicely in energy saving and water saving, and really nothing. And we were not underpowered, 1,200 in one group. So that's I think it's a bit sad to have a null effect. It was a bit of hard work to get it published, but I think it's very important for the advancement of science and policy.
No, absolutely. So how much, I mean, this is always a very interesting question for people who want to continue in academia, but you've mentioned publishing. How much did you struggle to get a null result published, despite that null result being quite controversial to earlier work and as a result, quite interesting and quite novel?
Well, I think it depends a bit on the journal you pick. And by that time, it was not kind of the big paper. So it was, I could pick a nice journal, so to speak. So I didn't have to aim for the stars in that sense. And then we went for behavioral public policy, and the editor was really nice and also interested in null results. But then it was a bit of work with the reviewers. Were like, okay, we see you have a null result, but then explain why it is there. And then, they kind of drag you deeper into data that is, either not there or very exploratory. So that was a bit tough to do that in a nice, I tried to be very open about all the things I did, but I think that was a bit of a struggle with the reviewers to get it nice and clean, but also more informative than saying there's no effect.
Fair enough.
Okay. And I don't know whether this is a bit of a change in direction for the conversation, but I'm interested in how you transitioned out of your PhD into your postdoc. So when did you wrap up the PhD, just for a timeline?
I think officially my contract ended October last year.
Okay.
And then I got an extension 3 months, so it was till the end of the year.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually meant that, if you talk about the econ job market season, I was totally at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
I was exactly like halfway the year where you should actually not apply. So I applied a year earlier. I went to the job market. I think I got one interview.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the scariest thing ever, because that was the physical one in the hotel. It was like really great. But it was in the Netherlands. So I was like, okay, I can just take the train there and check it out.
It's not a flight.
I felt a little bit like, let's just try it out. But then over the start of 2020, I started applying a bit more intensively, and then all over until the end of summer. At some point, I had the rejection every week in my inbox, so that was not so nice.
And were you applying exclusively to academic jobs?
Not only academic, I also did some of the policy-related things. So I live close to The Hague, so I would also be happy to work in one of the government agencies.
Sure.
If it was research related, though.
Of course,
I only applied in the Netherlands also, right? Which is a big restriction in that sense.
Yeah, sure.
But I was not willing to give up all other things.
Yeah. No, that's
so
good.
yeah, I just thought let's give it a try, and then if it doesn't work out, I can transition to, I don't know, something with data analysis, blah blah blah, and kind
Sure.
of float off to the industry. That was kind of the
Yeah.
alternative, but I wanted to give it a try. And then I found this postdoc, which, it was screaming my name, the ad, I thought. But that made it even scarier to apply, because I thought, if they now reject me, then I really don't know where to go or what I'm worth. But then in the end, it was really nice. So.
Oh,
Okay, good.
No,
And
glad.
you got to be in Amsterdam. You got to work with Creed, who you were already closely linked with anyway.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that helped?
I think maybe for the postdoc, yes, but I think for the tenure track job market ads, they sometimes also have at Creed or at the University of Amsterdam, they really aim for the stars too, right? And that was the season where I think the US market was a bit crazy. And then I heard also the craziest things from other people who were, let's put it a bit more traditional, who did the job market hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard crazy things about that. And I think there they really want to get the top candidates of the top universities. And I was a bit of an odd one out in that sense. But maybe once I'm in, it is nice. They're like, oh, you're Dutch. And oh, by the way, you know something about the environment. Maybe you can teach this climate change economics course. I was like, okay.
Sure.
So now it's kind of funny. I'm talking to my former colleagues to set up this new course. And
Dope.
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
so in that sense, it's a bit of a backdoor, maybe. Maybe now it's a positive thing, but
Yeah, I'm wondering whether for the listener you could begin to describe what the economic job market is and how it works, because it's one of those things that we talk about.
I explained it quite often because my colleagues at this natural science department, they're
Of
like,
course,
what the
yeah.
heck are you guys doing? This is crazy. I think maybe
It
one
is.
thing I have to explain is that in this natural science environment, or at least at our faculty, the idea of graduating or defending is that, I'm still not sure if it's a written or unwritten rule, but you need 3 publications and 1 in review.
Okay.
Which is in econ crazy, but in those fields it's more natural, but you also write with more people. So it's also a different, right? So they say you write a paper on your own. Does that mean you don't have friends? Are you a total... that's really what they think, right? So they think this single author paper, 2 people are like, oh, so apparently you're a dick and nobody wants to work with you. They write.
That's one way of interpreting
exactly,
or an economist.
Or an economist. Well,
it. Same thing.
Yeah. So they write with 10 people, and that's totally fine. And there, the last name is the last author, sometimes more important. So, but yeah, the econ job market. Yeah, how to explain? So the idea is that you have one magic grade paper you call the job market paper, which is the best you can do.
At this early stage in your life with the bare minimum of training and experience.
Right. And then you send that and your CV, and then you apply to many, many, many positions. Then
Probably hundreds.
Yeah, which I didn't do, right? So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask to explain this. And then you get interviews, and then you hope to get them. So I was there having 1 interview, and others were having 20 or something. I felt a bit weird about that. Yeah, so I think it's a bit the strategy of the faculties is also high risk, high gain. So you hire a person based on their job market paper, which is it's not finished yet. It's not published. It's often you will submit it in a top 5 or top something journal. And then, once they hire you, it's supposedly getting published in a top place, and then you drown in teaching. Okay. I think that's the idea of a tenure track job. Well, the negative explanation of a tenure track. So in that sense, the postdoc is even nicer than I expected, because it's 80% research, 20% teaching, not so much admin stuff. So maybe unexpectedly lucky in that sense.
Well, but I think it's cool you sort of did your PhD in an environment where the sort of the economics norms were challenged as why would you have to do that? Seems so silly, because most people who are doing a PhD in economics, it's just, this is what you have to do, this is just how you get a job, and you just got to suck it up and do it. And if you don't want to do it, then maybe academia is not for you.
No, maybe economics is not for you.
Well, yeah, but it's one and the same if you're
Sure.
only surrounded by economists.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I'm wondering, maybe, Jantsje, from your perspective, I'm wondering to some extent whether your version of the econ job, because obviously, like you said, you only applied to things in the Netherlands, your experience is entirely Dutch. Do you think that has maybe played a role? Because I do feel like the Dutch academic system is a lot less hostile than the UK and the US systems.
Oh, that could be. Yeah. Yeah, good question. Yeah, but I do think that the Dutch econ faculties, the classic ones, so to speak, they do want to compete with the UK and the US ones, and they do want to hire these people. And then, well, I do think that sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Then people are either they drown in teaching, or they don't like living in the Netherlands, or they have a partner that moves, and all these kind of things. So in that sense, I was more of a safe hire.
Sure.
Not sure if that was that you should ask someone else about that. But yeah, it is a bit of a crazy system. Yeah. But then I think that natural science approach, that's also a little bit of a crazy system where you need so many publications, and they were always shooting at, so in econ there's this top 5 or top 10 thing, and they were always, fellow PhDs were always, if your first try is not at Nature, then it's not a good try. So they tried them all: Nature Communications, Nature Climate Change, I don't know, Science,
It's a good thing Nature has so many subsets of journals. Otherwise, this would not work out.
Yeah, true. But then I wonder at some point whether they will also become predatory.
Yeah. No, that's fair. No, I mean, when you initially said it, like, oh, the natural sciences are much better about this, and then, to graduate you need 3 publications, and I was like,
Yeah, well, I've seen some people really struggle with that, right? If you have one and it takes a while, and then, does it mean that your PhD is worth less? I don't think so. But yeah, so it is good that you see the progress is a bit cut into pieces. Right, so I always have discussions with my dad about this. My dad is a historian, a medieval historian, and he thinks it's crazy that you put your name as a promoter on a paper with a PhD. It's like it's their work. So in history, they write a book, right? So after 3 years, he's like, oh, now they came up with this, let's have a look. Which is also a risky strategy.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think, it's interesting how it differs across the disciplines, and I try to take the pros from all of those sides and not to worry too much about the cons.
No, it's true.
But yeah, I'm a big optimist, which has I think helped me a lot, but sometimes gets me into 20 side projects and other things.
No, that's fair enough. Good that you mentioned this, because I'm an optimization junk. So I'm always curious to know, how did you manage your time, and how did you actually go through the PhD, and has this actually helped or backfire transitioning into the postdoc? Given that you've already mentioned your 20 side projects, so now I need to know.
It's not 20, but no,
don't lie to me.
I think, so one thing I started, I think in my bachelor, at some point I was a bit amazed by the number of hours that they put for each course. So they tell you a course is so many EC, and that's so many hours. Sure. And it didn't really translate for me. So then I started to time it. So I use this timer app. It's called Toggle, I think, but there are others as well. You just click it, and then you can put different projects. And I just never quit that.
Huh?
Yeah, so I just time everything, but every work-related thing. So I stick to the 40 hours pretty strictly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I use it also as a commitment device. So when I say I'm writing and I'm wandering off in emails and whatnot, I'm like, oh, no, you told yourself you were writing. Or you have to change the input. So I use it both as a commitment device, and then also a bit, sometimes you're a bit stressed and you think you're stressed, but then if you really see where the hours go, you kind of get a bit grip on this. So that's also how I use it. And I started, I think, in the first year of the PhD thinking I should take all my holiday hours. We have a lot in the Netherlands, but
You say it as if it's a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing. But I think I don't know if you have readers from the US, we think it's crazy that we have so many days.
I think a lot of our audience is also British, so or at least has enjoyed education in the UK, which means that, especially in the PhD in the UK isn't treated as a job. and it doesn't
that's
have.
crazy. Yeah, I forgot about
So
that.
the PhD program in the UK is, as the Dutch would say it, not formalized. So it doesn't have any of the benefits of a formal job, such as leave, sick pay, holiday days, or any time of any kind of real time allotment. So it's a very, very different system. So yeah, I should have just done my PhD in the Netherlands. I should have had holiday days.
Yeah, well,
You know,
but
hindsight.
so I knew I was in a great position. I heard some of those stories, and I also got a 4-year contract. I've known some people who had a 3-year contract, and then they got the amazing offer to spread the money over 4 years, which I think is not really an amazing offer, but that appears to be how it works. So I got a 4-year full-time contract, and in the first year I thought, okay, let's spend all the holiday days. I might be stressed in the end. I was expecting to, get some stress at the end of the PhD. So let's at least now take all the days and enjoy life after work and be happy and see how that works. And it turns out that I never really quit doing that either. So I think I finished almost all the hours except for 1 week, which I accidentally sold or kind of changed into money while fooling around in the HR system. And then I was too lazy to call HR and to put it back. So I think, I used all the days except for 5.
Okay.
So yeah, and cool. I don't know. I do have some sport. I play volleyball. I do sailing. I do lots of other things that kind of keep my mind off and my eyes off the crazy screen. And that seems to work for me. Yeah.
I think it's important to dispel the myth or perception that to do a PhD, you need to just commit yourself 100% to working on the PhD all the time, working through weekends and evenings. And if you're not doing that, then you're not committed.
No, and for me, it's also not effective if I would do that. And I think my argument was also in the beginning, if I stick to 40, then that gives them a bit of an idea of my output. If I start with 45 and I ever want to go back to 40, they will be supervisor, whoever will think, something is wrong. So I'd rather stick to that one. And, if there's 1 week, it's not that I never work more than that, but sometimes you have a deadline, or for teaching, I prepare something in the evening. That's fine. But if you are already at the limit, you have no extra capacity for. So that's how I do it. But then I'm not sure if that will work for others as well.
No, that seems fair enough. I think a lot of people have completely different approaches to doing it. But if this works for you, and it clearly has worked for you, then it all seems fine. But then I'm curious, to get into the nitty-gritty detail. How much do you get done those 40 hours? So how many side projects are we talking? What does the average day look like realistically?
So I also try to spread a bit the type of work. So for example, in the first year, if you start a PhD, you have to read a lot, right? Or at least you have to get into this topic, but I cannot read 8 hours a day. I need something with my hands. So then I started to do tutorials to learn O3 and some other programming things. So I always try to start with something. In the morning, I'm pretty good concentrating on my own. I also like to come a bit early. And then I have 2 hours of the hard work on my own. And then I have to do something that's a bit easier. So either, I don't know, something like grading or whatever, responsive things, or programming, or some clear task. So I try to spread those things a bit over the day. And then if you want meetings, I rather have them in the afternoon because I can just respond. I don't need my concentration or, and then I think during the lockdown year, I had some side projects which actually helped me through, I think, because I got a bit fed up with all this, the same flood game over again, analyzing it, the reviews, blah, blah, blah. And then I got into a couple of side projects which were so exciting that I could always use, one part of the day for something I was excited about, or I had to finish something or make a figure or a graph or just some weird LaTeX kind of details. But that does feel like you finish something at least. And then in the other hours, I kind of made my way through the things I was not so excited about, like writing.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And we also had what was also nice that we had a writing group at some point. It was women only. For me, that didn't matter too much, but someone set it up.
Sure.
And then we had every week, I think twice a week, but currently it's 2 hours that we would all go into Zoom and then start like 5 minutes. What are you writing? And then we would do a Pomodoro, 20 minutes write, 5 minutes complain about stuff, or 25. Yeah, that really worked. So at some point I even moved the hard parts there because I knew that some others were waiting. They were also going to do their things they didn't really like. But then in the other hours on my own at home, I could do the fun things.
Okay,
cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I think I'm
cool
trying
tips.
to consciously move these things around such that it makes me most effective. But I think you also have to be a bit nice to yourself because there are also days that things don't work and it doesn't really help if you get fed up with yourself. So I try to be nice to myself and then, then let it go.
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. I think there's a lot in there that people can take and try out for themselves. And I'm interested as well, because I know you said you're an optimist.
Yeah, that's true.
And it sounds as though you've got a really healthy attitude and perspective on the PhD and life and work in academia. But as a pessimist myself, just to balance this out, can you talk about, a time when you sort of failed in academia or the PhD, or when something went wrong, and what did you learn from it? How did you overcome it and carry on?
Yeah, I think in the beginning I had a hard time because I was kind of battling this other system and first having to collect data, and then the professor was like, 1 paper a year, first year, where's the first paper? And I was like, okay, but that's not how it works. So that was a bit tough. And then there was, I got invited to help out with a course, and then I was really excited about that. And then he told me, well, that was kind of funny. He didn't say no. He said, I urge you to reconsider. But he said it so often that it meant no. So he was trying to protect me from doing other things at the side. And I was super angry about it because that other thing looked exciting to me rather than, but yeah, I think in the end he saved me, but I hated him for quite a while about that. And there was also a time where I think my second paper we had this idea there was a special issue on behavioral insurance, so that would be very nice. And then, of course, special issues have deadlines. And we already wrote to the editors that the data would be in for like 2 weeks or so. So that was kind of close. And they were like, oh, that's fine. Just give us your best shot. And then we got the data. And of course, some things are unexpected. So I worked my ass off for those 2 weeks. And then I think, 2 days before, I told my supervisor, this is not enough. I need more time to finish it up. I can't send it in like this. And he was like, well, just email the editor. Maybe you get more time. So I emailed the editor and I got a reply. So I think I asked, can we have a couple, 1, 2, 3 weeks more or something? 1 to 4.
Not a shocking time, at least.
And then I got the answer, yes. No specifics also. So then I didn't know, was it 1 week? Was it 2 weeks? What? Yes, what? But okay. But then I was already moving until I was working my ass off the 2 weeks before. So I was already over all those hours and super stressed. And then I continued that for another 3 weeks until we finished. But then, I almost crashed. So that was, I felt that it was too much. Yeah, I don't know how, but I managed. But
Did it get published in the end?
Yes, yeah. So in the end, it all worked out.
I mean, this story could have been like so much worse where, this editor like just hit yes as a reply to your email thinking, yeah, you can get like an additional week. And then what would have happened is that you wouldn't have sent everything in on time. And then this special issue did get published and the editor just never replied to you again.
It took even ages afterward for the whole special issue to get published because some others apparently took it even more lenient and So I think it was accepted, after rounds of revisions and stuff, but at some point it was accepted. And I think 1.5 years later, the special issue came out. It was great. I was so mad about this. It's like, all this stress for nothing. Then supervised.
Well, a good publication.
But at the time, I tried to, I felt it was kind of almost burnout-ish too much. And I couldn't distract myself with like the normal things. And at some point, my boyfriend came with this wooden game. I don't know, not chess, but some other two-player game. No, I can show you actually, but that doesn't work on a podcast. But
I'm afraid not on this platform. It is audio only.
Yeah, but it's some sort of 2-player game, and then we played that quite often, and that I figured out it helped because I don't like losing. So then I really had to put all the concentration in there, and that meant it was kind of leaving the stressed part.
Unless you lost, in that case, I'm sure you would be very stressed again.
Yeah, but it's not the same as then you lose a game. It's not too bad.
Sure.
So that kind of got me through. But then I realized when I finally submitted, like this is the limit. I don't want this ever again. So after that, I tried to be more careful.
Yeah. No, that's. I mean, I'm glad it still ended well. But like Sarah just said earlier, at what cost? You mentioned something that I kind of want to get back to. So your supervisor had a very different expectation than you did from the PhD. Like you said he or she, they. He?
There's also a she, but she was less. Was more polite and very German and very background and very nice. But I really had to get at the beginning. In the beginning, I also asked her opinion separately to get her opinion, because if the three of us would meet, she would never say anything. That got better over the years also, but
Sure.
But yeah,
he your primary?
Yeah, so he was a primary. The promoter, and she's co-promoter, I think.
Okay, right. So let's take it from his side, from the primary supervisor side. He indicated that 1 year, 1 paper. Obviously, in your case, that didn't work out because of how your data worked and how your data collection worked. But was he an economist?
Yeah,
he's
an economist, but not an experimental or behavioral economist. So yeah, he normally worked with data that was already around. He did some survey work though, but that's, I think, much quicker, at least to develop, than experiments.
Sure. We can confirm.
Nice, good to hear. Yeah, so that was a bit of a managing expectations. Also, I think because one of the PGs he got before already kind of walked in with some almost finished papers in his pocket.
What the hell? That's nice.
Some people I think there's also some people that do their master thesis on the same topic that also gives you a head start. So these kind of things. And then we had to take some courses in the first year, or not really the coursework like the US coursework, but more in the system it says you need some sort of points. So there were some kind of workshops you could take. Which I happily
UK
did.
Scholarship system.
Yeah, so I already ticked all those boxes in the first year, but that didn't feel like enough for him, apparently. So in my first year evaluation, it says she's behind, but now she's on the right track, or something like it. Literally said that. I was super mad about it.
I can imagine.
But then, at some point, because then the first paper or the first experiment kind of worked out, and then I could do some sort of variation on that, and that was much easier. And then at some point, I looked at the same data, thinking I was trying to teach myself R. I was trying to move from Stata to R. I was like, oh, this is nice. Let's look at the same data and try to replicate it, kind of for fun, in the sense of those hours in the data. I try to do stuff rather than write stuff or read stuff. And then kind of spin-off paper came out of that. So that paper actually started with me playing around, making nice figures in R. And then at some point I showed my supervisors like, oh, but that we can work with that. So then it started to be more in flow. But that you can't really, predict that from the start.
Yeah, that is difficult to schedule in. I always find it, unless you're a person who is especially focused on writing methodological type papers, unless that is your niche, because that is perfectly valid, does happen. I think it is very difficult to predict out of a topical PhD that you're gonna plan in writing a methodological paper. I know Sarah also has one, but that is also more of a happy accident than anything else. So I find it very difficult to plan for those type of papers. I mean, if you can, great. If you can't, seems rather normal. But I'm curious, so how involved were your supervisors? Because it sounds like maybe they were... I mean, I find this really common with economics type supervisors, but they seem really hands-off.
No, I think mine was quite involved. He was also the quickest email replier I've ever met, which is something you cannot complain about, but I still complain about because sometimes I wanted to send him something and get 2 days for myself to do some side funny things. But then I got an email 2 hours later. Nice, I looked at it. And I was like, got to get back to this. But No, but
can you give me his name and email
Yeah,
address? Like, I'll tag him on as a supervisor. It sounds fine to me.
No. So he was really good with that. And then we had a meeting. Yeah, I don't know, once. Sometimes it was once a week, then once every 2 weeks, then once every 3. Then I don't know. It was a bit. But I organized that myself. Yeah, I guess you have to take some initiative there, but he was rather good with that. But yeah, and then he was also pretty involved in the writing. So at some point I even made use of that. I was like, oh, he's going to go over it anyway. So I wouldn't force myself to work until the nitty gritty details because I knew he was going to go there. And I spent my time a bit more on the content or the programming or I don't know. So that was nice. But then the whole theory part or when it was about programming, that was all mine. No help whatsoever. Help in the sense that, I don't know, we would reach out to other PhDs and I would reach out also at conferences to other fellow experimentalists. So there was a lot of effort from my side. But yeah, in the end, that also paid off maybe in the networking kind of job marketing at some point.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. So when you say they were involved with the writing, as in they look at your writing, they edit, they give pointers, they restructure, or like they actually write?
No, the first. But sometime in the beginning, it was quite intense, right? You get it back totally read. And
I remember.
And then at some point it was less. But I mean, you would rewrite part of a sentence or something.
Sure.
And then sometimes I wanted to bring it back because I think his style is a bit long and boring. But yeah. I would always have these discussions about titles. I like the funny economist short titles, right? Yeah, but he likes to have the abstract in the title because he thinks the only thing people will read is the title. So they rather have everything in there and every keyword that Google wants to find. And I was always pushing to have the funny title. So in the end, you see that some ones worked out nicely and others were, well.
We can see in which papers you won and in which papers he won.
You can see that, yeah.
Fair enough. I think we've gotten so much from this episode already. I think to wrap it up, otherwise we'll just talk to you for many hours on end. And I'm sure you've got many other things you'd like to be doing with your day. A couple more questions, but we can keep them short, I promise. From this entire episode already, you've given quite a lot of advice or you've shared quite a lot about your experiences and how you have dealt with that or how you would have dealt with that in the hindsight. But what advice would you give to new or current PhD students?
Oh, on top of all of this. You shouldn't forget that you do this whole research thingy because you like it. So I think, of course, there are parts that are not so much fun, like, I don't know, responding to reviewers or writing that part of the introduction section. But as long as every week there are some parts that you think I have the best job ever, you'll make it. So try to keep that balance.
Fair enough. That seems very fair. So you've already mentioned you're currently in a postdoc. You seem to be enjoying that postdoc well, so that's good, and we're very happy for you.
Yeah, there's table football involved.
There we go then. It's a win-win in everyone's book. We always want to know kind of how do you see yourself develop? Like, what was your idea after the PhD for what you wanted to do, and what is your idea now in terms of professional development? Where do you want to go?
So I think what I really liked transitioning into the postdoc was that it becomes more team science. Right, so the PhD is a very lonely thing, and that's also what I already kind of like with the side projects a bit in the lockdown year, and then in the postdoc as well. It's more team science, so that I would like to do and to have projects with fun people around the world, and then also that you can do that part you're good at. For example, I like the programming and that part quite a bit.
Do you want to become my collaborator? I hate it.
Yeah, well, if you're going to write my theory section, because I hate that, then
I'm a good writer.
we have a deal. Nice. So that part I really enjoy. I think I would like to, if it's possible to stay at Crete, I would go for it.
Okay.
If in the meantime I find something in... maybe something more applied in the neighborhood because I live close to The Hague. So if something in a government position where I can still do research would be available, I think that might also be an option. And I'm now developing my own course. So I'm really enjoying that. I hope that that one works out and that I can also help some people as a teacher. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see in the end where I end up. But my dad's already a professor, so I don't have to do it to get the Professor Mol name, because that one already exists. But I think it's a very different time now.
Very true.
That sounds all very positive, and we wish you the best of luck with whatever the future may bring. And our very, very last question we always like to ask is, where can the listener find you if they want to catch up with your...
So we talked about my name, which is a bit difficult, but if you can spell it, you can find me. So it's Jantsje.nl.
There you go. She's so good,
Yeah.
she doesn't even need a last name in her site domain. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice. And just your personal website, is there anything else you'd like to plug while you have the chance?
Too many things at the same time, but maybe I was paranym for my hurricane natural scientist friend Nadia Bloemendaal 2 days ago, and she got cum laude, and I'm extremely proud of her.
Big up.
Aww.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much, Jantsje, for coming on. And Mel is laughing at me for mispronouncing your name.
No, it was good. It was good.
It wasn't that bad.
This is the confidence I get instilled in me on a day-to-day basis. But thank you so much for coming on and joining us and just chatting to us about your experiences. Love your honesty and your optimism. It's been a good balance. And yeah, good luck for the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So that was us talking to the amazing Jantsje Mol. So I think I now actually know a bit more about flood prevention, which I didn't think I would learn from this specific episode. Sarah, what did you take away from it?
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic conversation. It was lovely to meet Jantsje. You know, at Nottingham and at Warwick, we have close ties with Creed in Amsterdam. So it was cool as well to sort of, bring our network together a little bit. But I think one of the things that stood out for me was, Jantsje's PhD topic specifically, and the fact that she got to interact and work closely with non-economists and non-behavioural scientists, and how that has affected her worldview and her view of academia as well. I mean, her dad being an academic also has probably had an effect on the way that she views, the PhD like a job, as well as the fact that the PhD is advertised and paid and treated like an actual employment opportunity in the Netherlands as well.
Isn't that convenient?
I know.
So jealous.
And what a difference that can make in terms of, how you manage your time and how you sort of
She takes
can
holidays.
Be resilient. Yes.
I'm on the floor crying. No, I mean, I personally think, because there's a lot of talk of like most European institutions moving more towards the American model of having PhD programs, I would strongly recommend that they move much more towards the Dutch model, where there is proper pay, sick leave, sick pay, holiday leave. Like, please stop with the casualization of work and treat PhDs as they deserve to be treated, which is as a proper employee.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox because this is always because the thing is, I am Dutch, so I was used to that system, then went to the UK and then enrolled in the UK system for half the pay and none of the benefits. So that was a bit of a struggle.
Seems like a bit of a raw deal, that, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, to say that politely, I fucked that up. Yeah,
and you got to live in Coventry, which
don't remind
just
me.
the highlight of your life.
Stop! Oh my god, I'm having flashbacks. Now, anyway, let's talk actually about Jantsje. It was great to talk to Jantsje. First of all, congratulations on her finishing the PhD, because she's had her Viva relatively recently as we're recording this. Yeah, such a cool topic. Like you said, I didn't think we'd be discussing multiple academic systems from both countries and both fields or specializations, if you will, because it is true that, her dad as a historian has essentially written a book that is how they format their thesis. Obviously, the economists, given the long publication timelines, they don't come out of the PhD. They often don't come out of the PhD having all of their chapters published, and definitely not 3 of them published, and then to hear about the natural sciences, where apparently it is completely normal and actually expected to come out of the PhD with 3 publications, 1 on the works, and God knows how many authors on these respective papers. It's so different. So interesting.
Just proves how arbitrary these rules of academia are, and like the rules of success in each discipline. It's just like so diverse across every subject. So I think it's incredibly freeing to have those sort of multiple perspectives of what success looks like, or what it takes to become a specialist expert, the sort of objective measures of success. Because it's crazy. I know we have to have them, but it definitely just changes the way you play the game so much.
Absolutely.
If the game is getting the PhD, it's a completely different ball game. 100%.
Yeah. Also really interesting to know. So for the listener, we've done an episode with Lenka Fiala as well. Lenka and Jantsje are actually friends. And it's just, they're both great people. That's not the point here. And this is also not a game of comparing PhD students or comparing women for all I care. But it's, Lenka was very honest about being like, I work way more than 40 hours a week. That is just how I work. That is how I wanted to achieve what I did. And then to contrast that with Jantsje just being like, I have Toggle as an app. I track my hours. I do 40 hours a week. That's it, and that has worked for her, and I just find it really fascinating to see how different people approach a PhD completely differently. But it is nice to hear that there are people who manage to do this in 40 hours a week. There you go. No, I mean, it's the beauty and the curse of a PhD. The beauty is the flexibility. You get to work in the way that it's best suited for you. But the curse is the flexibility.
Feeling as though no matter what you do, you're never doing enough. Like constantly comparing yourself to other people and other people's schedules and outputs. And it's being able to have a strong sense of self and a strong sort of sense of, this is how much I work, this is how I'm going to do it, and that's okay, and I don't need to defend a 40-hour work week. I feel like sometimes on the PhD people will be like, I do work really hard, like,
I know you work really hard.
No, not me. But people have to like make excuses for taking time off. Or,
absolutely.
There's a sense that people feel guilty for taking the necessary time off, like on an evening or on a weekend, which is necessary to, work sustainably and be productive. But it's a bit of an odd one, navigating that sometimes.
Yes, but I mean, if you take nothing but one thing away from this episode, you can do this on a 40-hour work week. Jantsje is properly published, currently in a postdoc, doing very well, working on really interesting stuff. So guys, that's all you really need to know. We've just interviewed another really cool person doing really cool research. Excellent. You know what? Goal of this podcast completely achieved, I'd argue.
Yeah, definitely ticking that box.
There we go then. Well, guys, as always, we hope you thought this episode was interesting, educational, thought-provoking, or, if nothing else, at least entertaining. And, we hope to see you again next week, where we will be interviewing yet another amazing and interesting person. So we hope to see you again for that. Bye.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying. You're the one I love. You're the one I wanna give to.